Now, that is the Candace Competition Law Advisory Services, CCLAS, in collaboration with the Competition Commission of Namibia and South Africa, will be hosting a seminar on mapping competition law landscape scheduled for 11 to 12 March 2025 at Arebbusch Travel Lodge. Now, the seminar is tailored specifically for compliance and procurement officers as it aims to deepen their understanding of effective competition law compliance and to mitigate the risk associated with potential competition law violations for corporate firms. Now, joining us with more details is the Director of CCLAS Advisory, Tjipitua. Good morning, ma'am, and thank you very much for making time to speak to us this morning.
Good morning, Lot. Thank you very much for having us.
Okay, let's talk about what inspired this collaboration between the CCLAS, the Competition Commission of Namibia, as well as that of South Africa, to host this seminar.
Thank you very much. So I think generally there's various areas in terms of which the private sector and the public sector in terms of competition law regulators can sort of collaborate on. But for this specific initiative, I think the initiative was really born out of the need to familiarize the subject in the public, and that comes as a consequence of the enhanced enforcement activity around the subject matter. More and more we're seeing competition law investigations being initiated by the local authority. And I think that has sparked interest in the subject matter, and hence the need to have a seminar of this nature, which is obviously aimed at bolstering and enhancing knowledge on the subject.
But, we understand that the primary objective of the overall seminar is mapping competition law landscape. Is the landscape necessarily just restricted to Namibia, or is it also touching on South Africa? I mean, we have so much common activities within South Africa. Sometimes we have law that we cite from South Africa as a guidance in terms of us rendering judgments in Namibia. We use it as case law. Is it similarly in the landscape of Namibia, also in South Africa?
Also, I think specifically this specific initiative for seminar is built around competition law in Namibia. So the idea is really to drill down into the regulation and legislation that covers competition law within the Namibian landscape. But that's not to say that we don't. This is also serves, I think, as an avenue for us to draw lessons from jurisdictions outside of Namibia, especially considering that they have enforced this subject nature for much longer than what Namibia has. I think the jurisprudence in those areas is also far more advanced than what ours is, so there's definitely lessons to learn from regional authorities within the area, and this is why we've made the effort to basically invite speakers from across the region, some from South African authorities. We will be having the Deputy Commissioner of the South African Authority. He is very well versed on the subject matter, and he'll then be able to share his experiences around the subject insofar as the work that's being undertaken in Namibia.
I see in our introduction talking about that you're targeting compliance and procurement officers. How will this impact perhaps maybe efficiency towards their daily operations?
So I think generally competition law is considered to be a bit of a black box, and by black box we just mean the subject is, although very relevant, it's not very well known, and it's because of its specialist nature and I think the complexity of the subject. So the idea of the conference is really to bring out some of the key concepts in competition law and sort of make them relatable to the compliance law officers and procurement officers who will be attending the seminar. So that's looking at conduct like bid rigging, price fixing, collusion, all of these which might sound like strange concepts, but that occur in the day-to-day corporate operations. So the idea is really to equip these officers with the tools necessary and the knowledge necessary for them to be able to dictate this conduct within their own operations and know how to deal with it.
Earlier, my question on the issue of landscape, we talked about mostly the landscape. The seminar will focus mainly on Namibia, but are there opportunities to address cross-border competition issues between Namibia and South Africa? Is there potential of that? We have multi-corporations, for instance, who are originally from South Africa, but are dominant players within the Namibian market.
Yeah, so while the regulation and specifically the Competition Act of Namibia speaks specifically to conduct that has an effect within Namibia, I think generally the subject nature of competition law is such that it cuts across jurisdictions. And I think, as you've alluded to, this is especially relevant for multinational companies who operate in various jurisdictions across not just the continent but the globe. And so you often find that where one of these multinationals or one of the companies in these multinationals engages in conduct in a particular country, that conduct would usually filter through either down to one of the subsidiaries or across in one of the other regions. And so I think the aim of the conference is also to help compliance officers and any other person involved in these multinationals to be able to sort of detect when there's an issue around the subject matter and how to deal with it so as to avoid sort of severe or adverse consequences for their businesses. So
multi-corporation can be from another country, but when it operates in, for instance, Namibia landscape is subject to those laws within this country, even though it originates entirely from a different country.
Yes, indeed. So there would be jurisdictional nuances, there would be differences in how the laws are enforced across the various jurisdictions, but the primary principles are usually the same.
Okay. I mean, we understand that one of the crucial topics that will be discussed at the seminar is the role of compliance officers. Why it is so important for corporate firms to prioritize competition law compliance?
I think the primary reason why compliance is important is probably because of the cost of non-compliance. We've seen, especially in the competition law enforcement space, that companies found to have contravened provisions of the Act or statutes would usually be subject to very high fines. The highest fine that we've seen imposed in Namibia, I think, is in and around 15 million, but in more advanced jurisdictions, these numbers run into the hundreds of millions. So I think that's probably the most important reason. Other reasons would be things like reputational damage that comes to firms, which can be especially critical for institutions that are trading on stock exchanges, where any adverse news has the implication of affecting stock prices. But generally, I think compliance is good business, and I think as corporate responsible citizens, any institution would want to be found compliant.
Now, in terms of the general violations that occur on a daily basis, or that we possibly might hear or we might not hear of, that might come through in the papers, at times companies perhaps may violate laws unknowingly. What are the most common competition law violations faced by businesses in Namibia and perhaps in South Africa?
Well, yeah, so I think by now most people would probably know that competition law has sort of two primary subsets to it. The one is merger regulation and the other one is enforcement or restrictive business conduct. So insofar as mergers are concerned, I think the most common areas of non-compliance would be what we call prior implementation in competition law. So this is effectively when firms decide to merge their businesses without getting the necessary regulatory approval. And then the second area, which is restrictive conduct, and I think that is the broader area of competition law. You get various conduct around things like price fixing, bid rigging that we've already alluded to, but there are also other types of conduct that you've seen the Commission investigate in recent years on abuse of dominance. So here you're looking at conduct like margin squeeze, you're looking at exclusive conduct and predatory pricing. All of these sound like sort of strange and unfamiliar terminology, but I think this is really the idea behind our seminar, is to be able to unpack these very complex terms and basically demonstrate how they would apply to corporates on a day-to-day basis, because they are quite important as they sit at the heart of competition law enforcement.
Can compliance and procurement officers do anything from preventing anti-competitive behavior or practices within the organization? Do they have that kind of power in terms of the Namibian setup?
Well, it's not so much a power as it is probably initiatives that they can adopt within their institutions to make sure that they're able to sort of encourage the correct behavior when it comes to a compliance culture. So this could be done through various tools like adopting policies that regulate behavior. Training seminars such as the one that we'll be having also serves as a useful sort of refresher course, or as an avenue to be able to basically equip them with the necessary tools to be able to ensure that they're able to enhance compliance within their respective institutions. So there are various ways to detect this.
Okay. This partnership between CCLAS as well as the Competition Commission of Namibia, as well as your partners from South Africa, how important is it in terms of learning from each other regionally, lessons learned, you know, in terms of best practices that are out there? And will it only also have attendees from Namibia and South Africa, or will it go beyond that?
Also, I think the collaboration is very important. While there's been many other collaborations, I think this is the first of its kind in the specific area of focus that we have. And I think it's a very useful platform, because you're getting people from the private sector bringing in a private sector perspective, and then you have regulators from both Namibia and South Africa also bringing in their perspective. So from that perspective, I think we are poised for a very insightful, very educational, and very informative seminar.
Okay. You mentioned in the earlier engagement, you talked about the fact that Mr. Harden Ratishushu, who is a Deputy Commissioner of the Competition Commission of South Africa, will also be one of the main key speakers. In terms of his content, I mean, what do you expect him to touch? You said that he's well vested on this topic. What do you expect him to touch on?
Well, I think generally, as a relatively new outfit, we are very lucky that we've been able to put together a suite of very good speakers across the region. Hardini is one of those speakers. He's been in this area of practice for close to 20 years. So he's quite well versed on the subject. He will be giving us an overview of enforcement in South Africa, the journey that they've walked to date. South Africa, as you know, is probably the biggest competition law authority within the continent. So a lot of lessons are drawn from them based on the experience that they've had on that side. And I think the idea behind his participation is basically to bring that to the light and see what lessons we can draw from that experience as Namibians.
Let's talk about maybe those companies and individuals who are interested in attending the seminar. There's still space. Who do they need to contact to? Should they be interested? Yeah,
certainly. I think the numbers are filling up quickly, but we still have avenue for more people to register. The registration process is quite simple and efficient. All you need to do is visit our website at clasadvisory.com, so that's CCLAS advisory.com, and if the internet happens to be an issue, in the unlikely event that it is an issue, you're more than welcome, or interested participants are more than welcome to just call our office on 061-237-111, and they'll be guided as to what further steps to take to be able to participate.
Well, Madam Ashley Tjipitua, thank you very much for making time to speak to us this morning.
Thank you very much, Lord, for having me.
Okay.
All right.
Now, that was Ashley Tjipitua, who is a director of the Candace Competition Law Advisory Services, CCLAS, talking to us about that they will be having a workshop, a seminar, pardon me, in collaboration with the Competition Commission of Namibia as well as that of South Africa. The seminar will be taking place between the 11th to the 12th of March 2025 at Arebbusch Travel Lodge. Now, it will be under the theme of mapping competition law landscape. She did indicate that there's still an open venue that is for those companies and individuals who would like to attend. Simply contact us at CCLAS Alternatively, call 061-237-111 should you be interested in participating. Again, the seminar takes place between the 11th to the 12th of March here in the nation's capital. Stay tuned as Napewa brings you the news at 7.